Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs, Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmerman, discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Welcome back to Get Your House in Order. Today we're going to talk about a sensitive subject, the problem of marriage. The problem of marriage, especially for business owners. It is a challenge, and it is something we need to talk about and we need to be honest about because to build a successful business but losing on the home front is not a life of success. And so we need to find ways to actually integrate that. So Chris, the problem of marriage, why especially for business owners is this such an important topic?
Well, I think marriage is a problem for anyone. It's just a very difficult relationship that you know I would say it is the most difficult relationship to get right. It's really difficult on the one side. On the other side, it is the most joy-bringing relationship you will ever experience. Is if you get married and if you have a marriage, but it is difficult for anyone. But you know, specifically, you know, you as a business owner who's not just trying to survive in business, but who really who wants to thrive in business. You know, looking back, I've been married now for 23 years. We celebrated 23 years of marriage, so we've been together for more than 25 years. So, I mean, I can now say I can talk about the subject, and we've really experienced the ups and downs of what it means to be married, and I was just thinking the times that have been the most crucial for us is when we went on vacation together. So oftentimes we talk about family vacation as something, you know, so beautiful. We ask each other, you know, where do you go on vacation? And, you know, which island are you going to visit? You know, where do you go skiing? And it always sounds so romantic. And my experience is that even family vacations are very difficult. And perhaps I'm just speaking out of my, you know, my context here. But somehow when you're, you know, in your normal routine, in your normal active and busyness of, you know, going to work, you know, doing your stuff, and you know, then you know, you've got your system. But that once you stop and, you know, you go on vacation, all of a sudden, in a sense, your system crashes and you don't have a system, and then you're stuck with each other. And I've probably had the biggest arguments and fights in family vacations. And you know, I'm thinking at the moment of one specific one. We were down in Liguria, which is the coastal line in Italy. We'd driven down there as a family. We had rented out a beautiful Airbnb. Oh, most stunning scene next to Cinque Terre. If you're familiar with the area, kind of the colorful houses there on the coast. We were having this wonderful family vacation. It was an Easter time. Normally, kind of, you know, where it's more warm. You know, the flowers are coming to bloom again, and you know, kind of the Germans crave a little bit of more, you know, after the winter time, the sunshine. So we'd often go down to Italy, but on this specific place, we were in Santa Maria de Ligure, and we had this wonderful house. And one evening, Andrea and I, we had our three kids with us, Carlos, Alfonso, and Cedric. And I think we had an au pair girl, a nanny, with us as well. So we often traveled together with someone who could help us in the evenings with the kids, so that Andrea and I could actually, on vacation, take a vacation, a date night, which, you know, even that can be difficult. But Andrea and I went out, and we go to this wonderful kind of bay, and we go to a restaurant. We have this incredible dinner, spaghetti vongole. I ate, and afterwards we take a walk on the beach. So from the outside, everything looks like Instagram. It looks, you know, if I probably did an Instagram story back then, and you must have thought, this is the best thing ever. But believe me, hell broke loose. We took this walk, and my wife, Andrea, she put a gun to my head. And if you know anything about my character, I sometimes need a gun to my head, and in order to change, because I can be so persistent, and I can be so dominant, and she literally called time out. And even as I say it now, it may sound like fun. Believe me, it was no fun. It was a crisis. It was one of the most awful conversations. And basically, it was talking about our marriage, and talking about divorce, and talking about how this is not good, and something needs to change. And I wish this was the only conversation we ever had about the topic. But that's not the case. I can, we can talk through some of the things that we do, that how to, but I want to kind of, perhaps for some this is actually a relief to hear this. It's not easy. It's not easy to be married, and to stay married.
To stay married, to get is
to get easy. Sometimes it's easy. You just it's just all romantic. You go to Las Vegas, you buy a ring. You go for some champagne, and then you do it. In fact, I tell people the funny story on how I got married basically out of not thinking. I was very young, so I got married when I was 20. I proposed to Andrea. So it was. The story goes, I was 18 years old, and after high school, I wanted to go to Africa and work in Africa, explore some projects together with my uncle. I wanted to spend some time in Kenya, and on the evening before I left for that trip, Andrea was with me. We're boyfriend and girlfriend. And we were very sad because we were not going to see each other for the next few months, because I was going to be stuck in Africa somewhere. And back then there was no internet, there was phone calls cost a fortune. And so we would be separated. So we were kind of very sad. We were, she was at my place. It was late at night. We were hugging and crying and sobbing that we're not going to see each other. And then out of the blue, I can literally say out of the blue, I had this crazy idea to ask her whether she wants to be my wife. And so I just asked her, and
oh, there's a backstory to that as well, yeah.
No, and I just asked her, and she said yes. And then basically
I remember basically you leaving for Africa, and then Andrea coming to our place, sitting us down
to tell us we're getting married.
My parents on the couch, she telling my parents you're getting married, and my dad just looked at her and said, "No, you're not."
Well, that's also part of the story. But saying that to get married is actually quite easy. You propose, you plan a wedding, which can be stressful as well. But then and then you go on honeymoon. So that sounds all romantic. But the thing is, no one really teaches you on how this whole thing about marriage actually works. How do you do this?
Well, and in one of our former episodes, we talked about books, and you mentioned, I think, at one point that we read about all these subjects, but marriage is often a subject we don't want to read about because we feel like it's like raising kids. We know how to do this. Well, who are the parents of all these messed up people? I'm wondering. I'm wondering sometimes. A book might have helped, but we don't actually read. We don't. So often I think that comparison between business and marriage is a good one, in the sense, like in business we know we will go through ups and downs, and it's part of the story. It's part of what a business looks like. It's not always all kind of roses and sunshine, and the same is true with marriage. and just having that realization that if you are going through a time of struggle, a new season, often, some change in business with kids, the kids leave again. You'll experience this soon when your kids are out of the house. All of a sudden, there's a new season, and you just have to realize, I have to adopt my strategy. That what got me here will not get me there, and so something has to change. And so I feel like sometimes as business owners, we are so intentional about business. And if we would just use, the same principles for our marriage, just a stupid example, but just 2 weeks ago again, I sat down with my wife, and I realized we need a better weekly plan. As a family, I make weekly plans for business all the time. You're making sure that everything is taken care of, that over a month, over a quarter. And so I told her we need a quarterly plan, a monthly plan, and a weekly plan.
How does that go down with your wife if you do that?
She
likes that?
Out of pain, So we have 2 young kids, for those who don't know. And when 2 young kids enter the picture, every grade system that you set up
has a diaper on top of it.
Has a diaper and stinks. And so you need to realize you need a new way of finding time to talk. So because one of the things she mentioned is like, yes, we don't find the time to talk about the things that matter. We are in managing mode, and we don't want to live like that. We can survive like that, but we don't want to live a life of survival. So it needs to be more intentional. Now, a few years back when kids were not there, and it was just work and us, we found enough time for all kinds of things. Because
sex, for example.
Because there were no kids. But being intentional and saying, okay, how does the work week look like? The family week look like? When do we have date nights or lunch dates? Now we can't have date nights in the sense because they're kids, so we have to have a date lunch, and just making that shift and making it a priority so that my people in our businesses know that I'm not available at certain times is just very, very helpful. But sometimes we forget that we need to be as intentional about our marriage as about a business.
Yeah, so let's talk about sex. Because that's also part of the game. And here's the thing, everything that we get portrayed about sexuality kind of in media is always kind of, it always looks like fun and great and romantic and wonderful. And then if you are committed to marriage, that actually means you are basically saying no to every other woman in the world and saying, I'm going to focus in on this one woman, and we're going to, for sexual pleasure, this is it. One person, not everyone else. And that's a problem. Because, and so just being honest, not just out of my own life, but also out of a whole bunch of conversations that I've had with other men, is that, there are these desires, there's this pleasure that we're seeking. And all of a sudden, there's someone who can hold us hostage. Because basically, if she's not happy, I'm talking out of the men's position, and I know we also have women listening to this podcast. But if there's not a good relationship as base of that, well, let me say that it will show up in your sex life as well. So so in a sense. I've often said, even just for that, I want to have a good relationship.
You are so selfless.
Yeah, I'm a selfless human being. No, but saying that also kind of how we live there. So years ago I read a book on marriage, and I'm not an expert on this whole topic, but basically it says if you've got problems in your sexuality, within marriage, then it's a problem of communication. And so the solution to a sex problem is communication, communication, communication. Which, like, for a man is like, how can this be the solution? This sounds crazy. You know, we need to talk. You know, normally it's like, does this really need talk? But here's the truth of this whole thing. Again, it is something where men and women also function differently. I mean, that's where I'm very old school. It's like, if my wife was here, we have different kinds of needs, in all areas of lives, and including that. And so there needs to be a level of communication in order to make things work. And men and women are actually different. And so, you know, there is the biggest beauty in all of that. I mean, you know, I would say that the most fulfilling relationship is my marriage, but at the same time, it's not easy. It's really not. It's not easy.
Well, talking about sex with your wife or your husband, I remember my wife and I having the first conversations about sex, and that was the only time that I remember where I was uncomfortable, where I'm hesitant to say, you know, it's like I don't know, I don't need to talk about that. I'll show you. But it is something. Once you understand, once you realize there's a big difference in what the other person needs and what the other person kind of enjoys. There's a whole depth to it. That's why married people who stay, you know, who have worked over the years, they will tell you our sex life is 1,000 times better than when we started, because there is this continual also kind of improvement in this whole area if you communicate. But that's not the only area of communication. There are other areas of communication as well where we really need to talk about, you know, what does our spouse need? You know, so I remember back in the day I read the kind of the 5 love languages, realizing
there's a book, the five love languages. Actually, it's a good book.
Yeah, and talking about that you know, people need and feel loved by different ways. And so my wife, one of her love languages is touch, and so I had to realize and learn that
it's not sex. It's touch.
I should hug her also when I don't want sex. You know, and it gets a long way to because touch and physical touch is just a way where she feels you know, loved, and so just learning that, all of a sudden, if you are somebody who really wants to make things thrive in your marriage, can be a game changer.
Well, for me, the greatest revelation was that, you know, for my wife, it actually is acts of service that makes...
Oh, that's your specialty.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, yeah, I intellectually, I can't figure it out. How, you know, if I, you know, empty the dishwasher, how that makes her feel loved by me. Intellectually, I don't understand. And why I can't pay someone to take
23
the dishes.
years have shown you. You better empty the dishwasher.
Yeah, it is strange. But let's talk about the context of business. Big regrets that we have at the end of our lives, and probably, you know, most of us have heard that somewhere, is not that we didn't open up another company, that we didn't do another investment, that we didn't hire another employee, that we didn't, you know, figure out the marketing budget for the next product. But the big regrets at the end of the life is all going to be about relationships. And the relationships to the people closest to us. Where did we do wrong? Where did we mess up? And so this whole topic is a legacy topic for me. You know, and you know, our company vision here with Medici community and Medici legacy is really to you know, be so intentional about creating a beautiful life and a beautiful business that at the end of your life, you really, you know, you've created something that you can't just be proud of for yourself and for your family, but also for the next generations to come. But the whole topic of relationship is at the core of that. And that is something that we just never ever talk about, and so it's so crazy. I've been to 1,000 business conferences and seminars on all kinds of subjects, and you know, talking about marriage as within that context is never ever a topic, and I'm like, why? How can that be? It's like, you know, it's like the number one relationship that you need to develop and learn about, and if something goes bad in that relationship, then it has consequences in your business. Okay, now in December of last year, I went to my notary. I needed to, you know, do a whole bunch of signatures and sign some papers, and I looked at my lawyer there, and I asked him, you know, how are you doing? And he said, well, you're better again. I'm like, why is better again? Well, the case is he's gone through a divorce, and you know, we spent about 20 minutes him telling me his breakup story, which was a terrible divorce. And you know, he had to move out of the house, and his son doesn't talk with him, so it's a very bad situation. But you know, he wanted to be professional about it, and kind of immediately took it to the business and really told me very honestly on how that affected his quality of work and his quality of business. And he was very brutally honest, you know. And you know, I'm a client of his, and he said now he's back in swing, but it affected him. So you know. So I know sometimes business guys need a reason. Why is it good to work on your marriage? And I would say, if you don't, it's going to mess up. It's going to mess up your business as well. You know, how many guys do I know that literally had to cut their wealth in half because they've gone through a divorce? And you spend years. And if I told you that I'm going to take 50% of your earnings from last year, I'm just going to take it away and give it to someone else, you'd freak out. You'd take me to court. You know, it would be terrible. Well, this is exactly what happens in divorce. If you have a divorce is very costly. You know, and I have to laugh. I'm just thinking of a business friend of mine from Frankfurt. You know, whenever I talk to him, he was out with his wife for dinners at fancy restaurants, and I'm like, you're crazy. You're going to fancy restaurants like every day, almost every day. And he said, Chris, believe me, it's cheaper than divorce. Okay, I've done the math. It's cheaper than divorce. And so so it's really, for me, it's also a business topic. Your business will suffer if you're not, if your closest relationship just falls apart.
But that vision, to have that vision to say, okay, at you know, at the end of my life, lying on my bed, what will I be proud of? And to make this a decision to say, you know what, marriage and a successful marriage does not happen by accident. And I hope we all get this, but we normally don't hear it that way. We feel like if love, you know, you either fall in love and you fall out of love. Well, that's bullshit. You know, you can have, you know, feelings of love and the butterflies, but then it's a brutal work to design a beautiful marriage so that love, not the feeling of love, but love is at the foundation. And if you make that decision that you're not just you know, in no area of your business would you say, well, if I'm not feeling it this way anymore, you know, we'll go in a different direction. If this different direction would have major consequences on everything else, and you would just say, like, it's not my choice. It's just, you know, that feeling is now gone. And with marriage, you have to make the decision. If you are married, if you're thinking of getting married, to say, okay, if I'm if I am getting into this arena to play, I'm going to play to win. And what that means is I'm exercising like I want to win. I'm going to play and give it my best like I win. In halftime, when it's not going well, I'm going to adjust my strategy, all the things you do to win. And I feel like with business owners, and even I'm tempted sometimes to just let that pass, because she's not gonna run away this week if I'm not there. So it's never really urgent, but it's always important. And so there needs to be a whole shift in mentality and in vision to say, this is what matters at the end of the day. If I want to play in this arena, if you don't want to play, that's a choice too, and that's fine. But if you want to play to win, because the price for not winning is unbelievable. You mentioned the price for business, but about what happens in your own mind, what happens with with children. It's normally a very messy story. And now, yes, there are good ways on also how to end a divorce and end a marriage, and there's things to be said about that. But if we are in the game, even if you are losing and it's half time, think of ways on how you can turn that around and play to win.
Well, it's a sensitive issue, and I don't know whether this comes across as we're talking here, because also because we're not used to talking about this. Perhaps this is also this men thing. Is that perhaps women have better ways of communicating, also looking for help in this area. We're meeting up with their girlfriends and having a chat about about their marriage, and men, we don't do that. We talk about all other things but our marriage. And because it's a sensitive topic, and it's like, hey, don't mind your own business, don't interfere with my business. But that's actually part of the problem, is that it is so sensitive that we can't ever really talk about it, and there's no realm to talk about it. So yeah, let's talk about some practical things.
I wanna say one more thing in the sense, like. We all have very close friends, and in our family, people who've gone through a divorce, and where there was a marriage that did not work out, and there's no condemnation, or there is no looking down on that, because we are still up to grasp if our marriages work out or not. So it for me, it's a matter of focus, intentionality, and really putting in the work. And if you honestly can say that you are putting into the work, if you are playing to win, and you are giving it your best to make it work, that's where I want to encourage business owners to have that focus, and not just have it as that's one of the things that is important to my life, but there's no plan, there's no strategy, there's no growth in it.
Yeah, but I want to say that actually I listen very well when people talk to me about their spouse and relationship. For me it actually matters. If when I want to enter into a business relationship with someone, and I know that he has a messed up family life, and he's not taking care of that nicely, it tells me something about his character. And I'll be honest, that makes a decision whether I, perhaps want to do business with you, because I'm actually interested, in character. And so one of the things that shows up in marriage is the question of commitment. Commitment. Marriage. The definition of marriage is that you get married, and it's till death does part us. So it's a lifelong commitment. So it's a commitment thing. It's not something for this season, the next season. That's the definition. Otherwise, you don't have to get married. Marriage is this. So whether you stay in that game actually tells me about your commitment to what you said in the past. Now, for me, that is very important also in business. Because when I enter into a relationship and we cut a deal, we do some business together, and, in a year's time, you basically don't care about the deal you cut in the past, and you just walk away, or you just breach the contract, then I'm not going to be happy. And it tells me something about you being a person of commitment. So that's why, for me, it actually does intermix. I have to be honest. It matters for me how people develop their relationships, because I'm like, it reflects something of your inner character. And that's something we don't often talk about that in society, because it's like, family is over here and business is over here. Well, perhaps it's not. because life is actually a whole lot more integrated.
Well, that's why the conversation, if somebody has gone through a divorce, is you hear a lot of how they talk about that, how they've processed it, and how they are actually building up a new life out of it. I think that tells you a lot about character. We have kind of the rule that if you have not had a mess up in your life, we can't really trust you. And a mess up means either in marriage or in business or in health. If you have not gone through real crisis, we feel like life has not pruned you enough for you to be trusted. Now, you can either now stay there. So if your whole life is a mess all over in all areas and you have not kind of grown out of that, there is no character in that. But there's also character that has been built out of actually dealing with a big problem, a big crisis in a healthy way and getting the best out of it.
Well, and I just want to reiterate that there's absolutely no condemnation for us if things go wrong, because they do. And I've got a whole list of crises and things that I've messed up that I can talk about it on the subject. So it's really about learning some lessons here, and so that's why I want to have these conversations, and talking about some practical stuff that we do within our marriage. Andrea and I, we really we spend more time in communication, just the two of us, than we used to in the past, and so also this kind of this new season of life with the kids being older is less hectic, but to actually take time to really talk this 360-degree feedback kind of thing. In business, I hate this. I don't know if some business guys have told me, but they've done this at their company and they do 360-degree feedbacks, and they think it's the best thing in the world. I don't know. I've never done that, and I don't know whether I want that. But I can tell you that but probably it's good. But I can tell you that with my wife, we do that. We really kind of, let's cover all areas. Let's talk through them. And let's not have blind spots. So our friend Ed Dean in Phoenix, Arizona in the US, he always talks about leaders having blind spots. And that means there's an area that you kind of, you don't look at. Everyone may know that there's this blind spot, but you don't, or you don't want to admit it. And so, in a sense, marriage on a regular basis becomes a blind spot in all our lives. And in every marriage I know, and every good marriage I know, it becomes a blind spot in every bad marriage I know. So the question is whether we acknowledge that, whether we see it, and we actually take some steps to address it or not.
Yeah. Well, not the easiest subject today, but one of the most important ones if you are married or if you are thinking of getting married, to at least have that vision of who you want to be with your spouse and how do you want to set that up. So when it is about get your house in order, this is such an important aspect that we kind of need to reflect and need to think about that. We hope you subscribe. If you haven't, please do so. We'll talk about more difficult subjects also in the future. If you want to get the book, Get Your House in Order, you can go to medicibook.com. That's where you actually get it for free. And we'll see you and hear you in the next episode.